right now?
I'm Sue Wise. I'm William Wise's wife of 60 years. And I'm helping record with my husband because he's legally blind. And we're doing this together.
Okay, I'm Bill Wise. I live in Mason, Ohio, at
5860
5860 Aspen Court,
Mason, Ohio.
Mason, Ohio. I went.
Let's get the location where this recording is being made. That'd be the Senior Center, the Activity Center, Westchester Activity Center.
At the Senior Center in Westchester, New York.
Westchester, Ohio.
Westchester, Ohio. Recording from there.
Okay, good. Okay. And today's date is December 5th.
December 5th,
2011.
2011.
Okay, then Bill, if you want to go ahead then and explain to us how you enlisted in the Navy. The story behind your Navy experience.
I enlisted in the Navy in 1944. My mother and dad had a sign for me. I was a junior in high school when I left for the Navy. I went to Geneva, New York, Sampson Naval Base, where I took my boot training. We did all the preliminary things that you do in a boot camp. We learned something about seamanship. We went into the tear gas chamber. We went to mess. Everybody had a week in a mess hall, and it was just a regular, routine boot camp. From there, we went to.
Excuse me, Bill, but didn't you have an experience with the swimming pool? The Navy people supposed to know how to swim?
Oh yeah, we went to learn how to swim, or to see who could swim. We were standing on a 50-foot platform, and they said, "This is what they call abandoned ship drill." And there was a big fellow standing beside me, and the instructor said to him, "You got to go right after him." And he says, "I don't know how to swim." So the instructor pushed him, and the man grabbed me by the arm, and we both went into the pool. But he still had the 2x4 in his hand. It was a railing around the platform, and we fluttered around for a while, and we finally all got out all right. It was a real bad winter, and I think we spent more time shoveling snow than we did anything else. From there, we got a 1 week leave to go home, and from there I got on a troop ship or troop train and went to San Diego, California.
When do you think this needs to be started?
And
This is what he's saying.
in San Diego, we went to San Pedro and picked up the ship that I was on, called the USS St. Louis, which was a light cruiser. The was a well-armed ship. We had 15 6-inch guns. We had 4 5-inch 38s anti-aircraft guns. We had 2, 4, 6, 8 40 millimeter, quad 40 millimeter anti-aircraft guns that were in little tubs.
Were your duties on the ship kitchen or KP while you were on the ship?
No, most of the stuff was regular sea duty. We did a lot of cleaning, and the bosun mate come down one day and he says, he said, every time I come over here in the morning to inspect the head, or better known as the bathroom, he said, it's always dirty. And he said, I want it clean. And he says, I don't want any excuses. So when I went into the clean the head up, because that was part of our duty, everybody was sitting in there and told me to get lost because they were reading books. So what I did was, the head had a trough in it, like a horse trough, and the seawater come in and washed everything out back into the sea. So I took a roll of toilet paper, rolled it into a big ball, and lit it and put it in the trough. And as the fire run down the trough, everybody hopped out of there in a hurry. So the bosun was happy about that. He said, now that you got everybody out of there, let's clean it. So that was a regular routine in the morning. We emptied the place out that way.
Why did you learn to function as a group? How did you learn to function as a group?
Well, everybody it was pretty routine. Everybody sort of hung on together, and I was assigned to a 40 millimeter gun tub, and one day we were griping about everybody had a headache in a gun tub. And the lieutenant started to laugh, and he says, I know why. He said, you guys sleep in there. And he said, when they fire them 6-inch guns at night, your head goes about a quarter of an inch above the deck, and then it comes down on the deck. And he says, your head bounces on that deck all night long. He said, that's why you got a headache. He said, from now on, he said, wrap up a shirt or a blanket or something and put it under your head so you don't get headaches.
Were you assigned to the 5th deck?
What?
The 5th deck? Were you assigned to the 5th deck?
Well, in fact, I was assigned to the 5th Deck Division, which is in charge of the main deck aft, which held 40 millimeter guns and 6-inch guns in a mount, catapult, and a hangar deck. The catapult got hit by a suicide plane. Fortunately, no one got hurt. A couple of guys were shook up about it. In fact, we had one guy that was an atheist, and he said, I gotta go in and pray now. So we all thought that was pretty funny, but he didn't. And everything was pretty much routine from there on in. And of course, the war was winding down then.
Of course, Bill, you didn't say where you were. What theater? This was in the Pacific.
Well, I was in the Pacific in Task Force 58.
But where were you in the Pacific? What battles were you participating in?
Oh, we asked the exec officer what ribbons could we wear when we went ashore, and he says, "I want you to wear ribbons." He said, "But I don't want you to wear ribbons that don't belong to you." He said, "The only ribbons that you short-time sailors can use is the liberation of the Philippines, which MacArthur wanted everybody to wear." And he says, the Iwo Jima and Okinawa would be two major battles, and that would be in a Asiatic Pacific ribbon. He says, "You're also allowed to wear the American theater and the victory battle." He says, "Other than that," he said, "you guys that were just on here for a short time will not wear any more battles than that." So that was the battles that I was in the Navy.
When, in 1945,
I was
the armistice was signed, right?
discharged in July of 1946, honorably.
Mm-hmm.
But you were on a magic carpet duty.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. We were on magic carpet duty when the war ended for a little while. We were picking up Marines that were taken to Guam. We picked them up in Guam and brought them into San Diego for discharge. He said that. From there we were sent to Philadelphia. We went through the Panama Canal. We were invited to the Mardi Gras, but the captain of the ship found out that we were fighting with the people that were on the ship from Louisiana. So he said it would be a good idea if we went to the Mardi Gras and had a battle down there. So we went on straight through the Panama Canal and up to Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, while I was waiting for discharge, I was assigned to put the ship I was on during the war and two other ships, the Wichita and the San Francisco. We put them all three in mothballs. And then we went through the process of the discharging, which was in July of 1946. Now, you want me to go into the Marine Corps?
About the KP.
Your sore throat. KP.
Oh, do you want me to do the KP?
Yes,
KP.
please.
Okay, I was doing KP duty and I had a sore throat. And every morning I would get down and they would give me a shot or give me some pills to take. And the sore throat didn't seem to get any better. And the chief petty officer said, "You stay here a minute, I'll be right back." He come back with a shopping bag full of oranges. And he said, "Every time I see you," he says, "I want to see an orange in your mouth." And within 2 days, the sore throat was cured. So then I went to Pensacola, Florida, and I signed up in the Navy SEALs.
Now, where was this in your enlistment? Is this the first part of your naval enlistment, or
This would be the first part. This was before I went on the ship.
Okay.
I signed up in the Navy SEALs, and I was supposed to be 21, single, and no dependents. And of course, I was only 17. And halfway through the training, they were looking at the records, and they put me on bread and water for 5 days, and then told me to pack my sea bags. And I packed my sea bag, and that's when they sent me to San Diego, where I was then shipped to San Pedro, and then got on my ship.
So how long, you said you were halfway through SEAL training. How long would that have been? How long were you in training?
Let's say we had done most of the swimming part of it. And some of the explosive, probably we were in it about the 3rd week of it.
Okay. And how long would the course have been? Do you recall?
I don't really remember because they didn't tell you it's gonna be a course of 3 or 4 weeks or whatever.
Or 30 weeks or something, yeah.
The frogmen were different than what the Navy SEALs are now. All we learned was explosives for blowing up barbed wire for when they made the LST landing craft and stuff. That's what we were supposed to do. Go in and blow this stuff up and then wait for the Marines to come in. But
Clear the beaches.
they didn't say how long.
Okay.
After I was discharged from the Navy, I went back to work. I went to work for Westinghouse. We were building nuclear submarines, the USS Nautilus. It was a type of job where we had to get top secret improvement from the government to work there. We were working one day, and this Admiral Richtover came into the shop, and he was looking things over, and he said, "What are these discs here?" And I said, "Well, they're for running nuclear power." And he said, "Well, how come there's scratch marks all over them?" And the guy beside me said, "Well," he said, I laid the disc out," and he said, "I laid them out wrong." So he said, "I just turned them over and laid it out on the other side." He says, "They're okay now." And Admiral Richtover said, "If you bought a car that had 3 fenders on it, would you buy it?" And he said, "No." He says, "Well, damn it, we don't want submarines like that either." So he says, "Either do it right," he said, "scrap these and do it right, or we don't want it." So anyway, we finished the Nautilus around 1950. Was around the time that Kennedy got killed.
Excuse me, Bill, what type of position did you have with Westinghouse? What function did you have? What were you doing?
I was laying out camshafts for the nuclear reactor at the time, plus electrical wiring.
Okay.
You were locked in every day, secure.
Yeah, we had an 8-foot ceiling with 4 cameras on it, and that's the way we worked every day. If you had to go to the bathroom, you had to check in and check out. You weren't allowed to. And I went into the grocery store one time and a guy said to me, "Are you in trouble again, Bill?" And I said, "What did I do now?" And he said, "Well, the FBI was in here checking to see whether you drank or whether you smoked and everything else." So he said, "We're trying to get some kind of line on you." So about when we finished the Nautilus and started working on other submarines, Admiral Rickover came in and gave us a page out of the logbook. And North Pole been underwater for months. And he said, "You guys did a good job." And he said, I want you all to have a page out of the Nautilus. So from there, I guess we could go in. We could went to the Marine Reserve was going to call me.
Okay. In the year 1946, I joined the Marine Reserves for 4 years. Marine boot camp was different from the Navy. I started out in Parris Island, South Carolina, boot camp. I was sent for combat infantry training. We learned about hand grenades, rifles, and pistols, which we had to field strip and put them back together. We had to qualify on the rifle range, then we were sent to Camp Pendleton, California. We went by ship from California to Kobe, Japan. Left our sea bags in Kobe and told we would get on a plane for Korea. The plane will land and turn around and head back into the wind. Then we will get off the plane as quick as we can because we did not know if the landing strip was secure. We were divided in groups with different platoons. I ended up in Able Company. There were 12 of us, and we were replacements for the people that had been lost on their way back from Chosin Reservoir. The first day in the new platoon, we were told by the captain we were going north. We probably walked about 200 yards into a wooded area, and the captain got shot in the shoulder, and that was our first day in Korea. We had a master sergeant in charge of the platoon and 2 staff sergeants. This would change as we went north from day to day. Sometimes we had lieutenant, sometimes sergeant and private first class running the platoon. The spring weather was not bad from then on, and all of our food was sea ration. Sea ration comes in a box the size of a shoe box. Each box has 3 cans of wet food, which is baked beans, corned beef, hash, and hamburgers and gravy. The dry food was crackers, 1 candy bar, 6 cigarettes, and hockey tickets. Hockey tickets is toilet paper in a little package. They had a variety from the stew, roast beef and gravy, better known as meat and grease. As we moved north, the land got more into mountains and hills. The Chinese and North Koreans had a habit of putting down shoe box mines. They were made of dynamite and a detonator. Most of the time, they were placed at the bottom of a hill on the main trail that had grass, stone, and pieces of tin in them. When you stepped on them, they would snap like a grenade. They were placed in the ground, would be about 6 foot apart on a
If you would keep going after you heard the snap, you could walk over them and get away with it. But if you stopped with them, they would go off on your foot or between your legs.
Okay, if somebody stepped on one, he would call for a medic. If you ran to see how bad he was hurt, they had riflemen to shoot you. We quickly learned not to go to the wounded men, but to clean out the snipers on the wooded trail. As we moved north, our supply lines were longer and theirs got shorter. Going into summer, we lost more men because they had a new habit of zeroing in the mountains we just took and hitting us with mortar. We took a hill and lost most of the platoon. When we were relieved by the Army and came off the captain said to me, "Where are your men, Sarge?" Because nobody knew what rank I was, and I said, "This is it, all 5 of us." He said, "You will need some replacements." He asked if the Chinese tried to take the land last night. I said, "Yes," and he said, "Attaboy." We were on reserve for a week until I got replacement. So we went on a tank patrol as we got into the town. A mother was standing there with her baby. Fortunately, most of the men were walking beside the tank, and she threw a hand grenade on top of the tank. No one got hurt. The woman faded into a house. We could not find her, and the tank driver said, "We have to get out of here." I said, "Okay, but I have to count heads." I had 1 man missing, and we found him in an old bank building that had a... He must have fell through the floor, but he was okay. I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was just looking around. We helped to get him out of the hole and went back to the tank and kicked him in the ass. Just to get his attention and told him to stay with the platoon. We got into fall. It was cold and we had a lot of rain. What would we do when the sun came out? Take all of our clothes off and lay them over bushes with our sleeping bags to dry out. Our next assignment was a hill about 700 feet high. We were sitting in a dry drain ditch. One of the men said there's about 200 yards of open before we get to the hill. When I looked at the young men sitting there, I said I'd better take the point. We crossed the open land and went up the hill, some on the right and some on the left. At the top of the hill, there was a big bunker. The roof of the bunker was made with logs and sawed and covered by pine limbs. I had a new weapon I got from the Army.
The weapon that I had wasn't new. It was new to me, but it was an old, what they call a rifle grenade. You put a little charger on the barrel of your rifle. You take your ammunition out, and you put a charge in there for blowing the rifle grenade off. Yeah, the rifle grenade that I like to use was called white phosphorus. It would explode, and as long as the air would get at it, it would burn. In other words, if you had a piece of this white phosphorus on your hand and the wind was blowing, it would burn right through your hand. Okay.
I have no idea what it burned through, but the explosion inside the bunker shook the whole mountain. When I counted heads, I had not lost a man. We were sent out on a patrol to see if we could spot any North Koreans or Chinese. We walked into an ambush and 2 of the men were hit, one in the leg, the other in the neck. We opened fire on them and ducked out of sight and recovered the 2 wounded men. While the corpsman looked at them, I spread out the rest of the platoon. I asked the corpsman if the 2 wounded men could be moved. He said, with a little help, we can get them back to the line. Okay, we will leapfrog back. You take 4 men to help you, and we played leapfrog until we got back. Leapfrog is 4 men moving to the rear, and they cover the ones that are under fire until we send a few more so the first group can keep moving back. One of the men said there was some movement on the left side. I said, everyone stay down till I get back. That should be about 5 minutes. I ran down the hill, went to the left. When I looked up, there were 4 or 5 North Koreans walking single file down the trail. My platoon started to fire. The squad of men stopped to look where the fire was coming from, and I killed the 2 lead men, and the rest of them turned around and started heading north. When I got back to my platoon, they had killed 2 or 3 more. We sat until everything was quiet. I sent several of the men back toward the line and told them to keep moving back with the wounded. We sat for about 5 minutes and it was quiet, so I sent the rest of the platoon to cover 2 or 3 of us that were left. We all got back The 2 wounded men were sent to the MASH unit, and when I made out my report, the captain said, "That was a good job." They gave me a Bronze Star with a Combat V for valor and a field promotion to sergeant. We got a new first lieutenant who said he would be in charge of the platoon from now on. He said if it told him to run up a hill with a 50 caliber machine gun, he would do it. The whole platoon started to laugh, including myself. He looked at me and said, "Do you think this is funny?" I said, "Yes, by the time you run up the hill, you would be so damn tired, you wouldn't be able to fight." He said, "We will see the captain about this," and he went back to the headquarters to talk to the captain. The captain asked me to come down and tell my side of the story. He said to the lieutenant, "The sergeant has been over here for 8 months. So for the next 2 weeks, follow him around. If he stops fast, your head will go up his ass." 2 days later, he came over to me and he said, "We're moving up to take that hill." He had a .45 automatic tied to his leg like a cowboy. Without another word, he took off up the hill. I told the platoon to spread out and follow me, and it was the largest explosion. He stepped on a landmine. He blew off his foot, and we took the hill. It was time for me to leave the platoon and go home. I arrived home in Buffalo, New York, January 1952. I thank my wife, my daughter, my son-in-law for helping me write this.
Not too long, is it?
No, perfect. Bill, could you tell us how you got in the Marines? I mean, you came back from World War II, you went to civilian life,
Oh,
and joined the reserves, and all of a sudden you're in Korea.
okay. Start now?
Sure.
My older brother and his buddy, who was in the Marine Corps with him, said, we're gonna go out and have a few drinks. You want to come along?" I said, "Sure." So we went and had a couple of drinks, and which ended up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. We went to the recruiting station, and they both joined the Marine Corps. And I said, "Good." I said, "I'll go join the Navy." So I went over and I said, "I want to join the Naval Reserve." And the guy said, "Well," he says, "you have to go to a meeting, and you have to do this, and you have to do that." I said, "Forget it." I said, "No, I won't go in the Navy." And a Marine sergeant was sitting there. He says, "Hey," he says, "come on over here, sailor." He says, "I'll sign you up in the Marine Corps." So that's how I signed up in the Marine Corps. And when he called us back in, my brother and his buddy, they went to Puerto Rico for 6 months, and I got sent to Korea. So I got the dirt of the stick there.
Did you have an experience too with being colorblind? You have a little story to share with us about being colorblind?
When you came out of the Marine Corps, your vision was very bad. So we went to a specialist, and he wanted to know how you got there. And he said, "My wife drove me." So after many times of being helped, we were going to the veterans, and we were going to apply for disability. And they asked me, "Is your wife to write a letter?" So I wrote a letter, as I was told. And at the end of the letter, I said, "My question is, how could he have been accepted into the Marine Corps with his vision with not being 20/20, which I thought all Marines had to be 20/20 vision." And I never had a response.
Was there anything else you'd like to add to your recording? Did you think that offhand?
Can't.
Well, let me back this up just a minute. Before you told me a little story about being colorblind. And how you countered with watching the instructor with the manual, flipping the book for
Oh, for the colorblind. Yeah, when I went to go into the Marine Corps the first time, and they rejected me because I was partially colorblind. So what I did when I went in for the Navy, I watched the instructor put his fingers in between 3 or 4 pages, and he was giving everybody the same numbers. So by the time I got over there, I didn't have to look at the numbers. I knew what they were in my head, so I just repeated them. And he says, "You're okay." He said, "Go ahead."
There you
One of the funniest stories you've ever told, and the kids enjoyed it too, was the time that you
Oh,
told.
we went for a dental checkup, and we got on a truck and went down. I mean, the Army had a couple of dental officers down there, and the captain said to me, well, he said, "Sarge," he said, "you go first." He said, "It's your platoon." So I went in and I sat down in a chair and I said to the dentist, "I have a cavity in the back and they were supposed to fix it before I come over to Korea." I said, "It's awful tender." I said, "If you're going to fix it, fine. If you're not," I said, "please don't touch it." He said, "Don't tell me what I have to do." He said, "Sit down and open your mouth." So I sat in a chair, and he looked at my mouth, and the first thing he did was take a steel pick and put it in the where the filling had fell out. It was a bad thing for him to do because I had a carbine in my lap. I stuck the carbine under his chin, and I says, "You know how to blow your damn head off." And the captain said, "Don't do that." He said, "There's too many people watching." He says, "Get your troops, put them on his truck." He says, "We're out of here." So I put them on the truck, and I went over and I said to the captain, I said, "I counted heads, I got everybody." And I says, "You may be sitting there laughing." I said, "But when he put that pick in my mouth, I thought my head was coming off." He says, "I'm not laughing at you." He says, "I'm laughing at the dentist." He said, "You made him piss his pants."
One more was about when your troops were so tired, and the one general came with the.
Oh,
That's a good.
we come down off a hill, and the Army had relieved us, and I think I had 12 men left, and we weren't down an hour when a runner come up from headquarters, and he said, "The general is going to have an inspection in about an hour." I said, "Hell, we're all dirty." And I said, "We don't have any clean clothes." He says, "I don't know anything about that." He said, "Be ready for inspection." So I had this kid who was always bumming a bank, a drink of water. And I said to him, "Why don't you get an extra canteen? When somebody's shot," I said, "just pick up their canteen, hook it on your belt, then you want it to bug everybody for water." So about 3 days later, he come over to me and he said, "Hey, Sarge," he says, "I got this goop canteen." He said, "It looks like it's brand new. Is it all right if I keep it?" I said, "I don't care what you do, as long as you don't bug the rest of the platoon for water." So he cleaned it out and he brought it over, and I put some water purification tablets in it. I said, "I think you'll be all right." So anyway, this same kid is a tall, skinny kid. He's standing at the front of the platoon when the general comes up for inspection. And the general looks at him, and he looks at the canteen, and he grabs hold of it and jerks the canteen and almost knocks the guy off his feet. And he turns around to me and he said, Lieutenant? And I said, I'm not a lieutenant. I said, I'm just a sergeant. Or in fact, that's what everybody calls me. And he said, well, he said, does this man know he's in the Marine Corps? I said, yes, sir. He said, what's he doing with a goop canteen? I said, he was thirsty. And he says, well, he says, if he's in the Marine Corps, he should be wearing Marine Corps clothes. I said, well, sir, he does not have a railroad hat on like you do. And he does not have a red bandana around his neck like you do. I said, so if you're out of uniform, and it doesn't make any difference. And with that, he said, this inspection's dismissed. He turned around and walked away.
When did you meet him later?
About 2 months later, as he come down the line, and he was giving out citations and medals, and he pinned the Bronze Star on me, and he says, don't I know you? I said, no, sir, I never met you before.
Oh, very good.
And the one lasting thing is you had a pet. You had a crow.
Oh, we were on a patrol, and there was a burned out tree, and there was a crow sitting up in a tree, and it was cawing and making a lot of noise. And somebody said to me, "Hey, Sarge," he says, "here's a rock." He says, "I bet you can't hit that crow." So I took the rock and I threw it, and I hit the damn thing in the chest, knocked him down off the tree. I thought I'd never hit him. But anyway, I went over and I picked him up, and I took some communication wire, put some around his leg, put some on my belt. I stood him on my shoulder, and the first thing he did was grab my earlobe. And I reached up and I grabbed him by the throat, and I said, "You bite, you die." And it must have been pretty smart because he didn't bite me. So I had him for about probably 2 or 3 weeks. But if there was a gookarod, he would make kind of a gargling noise in his throat because he could smell them and see them before we did. So I thought, well, this is a pretty good idea. But the corpsman didn't like him. And every time he got near the corpsman, he would tear a piece of skin off his hand. So one day I don't know where we were at, but the crow was tied up with a communication wire, and the corpsman cut the wire and let him go. But he was perfectly content. He was with me for about 3 weeks.
Interesting. Isn't that something?
I never seen him after that.
And that was your time in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
All done, Jim?
Now I've got to start playing ping pong. Is that your husband?
Mm-hmm.
Really good looking guy. Look at the medals. Now this is the Bronze Star.
Mm-hmm.
God, he was in the Marines.